Okay, so let's get started. Again, my name is Lindsay Spear. I'm the campaign manager for HeatSmart CNY. We're a project of the Alliance for a Green Economy, who I work for, and Central New York Regional Planning and Development Board. We're funded by NYSERDA. This is a webinar series that we are working with in conjunction with HeatSmart Tompkins. Some of our installers we share between the two campaigns, and we are this week doing some solo webinars with the installers that are just with HeatSmart CNY. So we are a community campaign based in doing education and outreach on heat pumps. Our goal is to help people understand the benefits of heat pumps, the improvements in technology, learn the difference between conventional and cold climate heat pumps, and particularly learning about geothermal heat pumps. The goal is to help us all understand the new technologies available for heating and cooling our buildings and our homes, to remove barriers to implementation and generate confidence in making major upgrades to our homes. This is important because it's part of the renewable energy transition. Energy efficiency is a key part of how we make our planet more sustainable and our climate more sustainable, and even just our energy system more sustainable by regulating and reducing the amount of energy we use. And heat pumps play a key piece of that overall energy ecosystem. This is one of the reasons why NYSERDA has funded our campaign among many others in the state. And this map is about to grow immensely as more campaigns come online this year. So I know some of the people who are signed up for today's webinar are from the Central New York region. I also know some people are from outside of our region. And so I will provide information for other campaigns at the end of the webinar. So the HeatSmart CNY campaign, we've been over the past 2 years working to do outreach and education events throughout Central New York. We've hosted over 20 open houses and 20 workshops so far. And now here we are in this time of COVID-19. And so we're switching online and doing everything we can to keep educating, keep helping people connect with homes and homeowners and seeing real life examples while we're all spending more time in our homes. As of last week, with phase 1 of the pause in the reopening, our installers are able to come back into people's homes and do installation work, following the protocols put forth by New York State. In this time, our installers have also adapted to do virtual assessments. You'll hear A.C.E.S Energy talk a little bit more about what that process looks like. We do have a lot of information available on our HeatSmart CNY website for your perusal. And of course, we have our HeatSmart CNY hotline, 833-315-4328, or HEAT. You can reach myself, Dick Kornbluth, who is an expert on home performance and insulation and air sealing, as well as John Manning, who's a heat pump expert, to help answer questions that you might have. And we'll go from here. And I'm going to switch it over and turn it over to Belle with A.C.E.S Energy. And we're going to have A.C.E.S tell us about a geothermal system that they've installed. All right, Belle, it's all yours to roll with.
Perfect. Thank you, Lindsay. I'm going to start sharing my screen in just a moment. Lindsay, can you allow me to share my screen?
Can you? You should be able to. I've made you co-host again.
I think the wrong call-in for me is co-host.
Let me fix that.
Well, thank you everyone for signing up today. I am here from A.C.E.S Energy, and I am going to show you an installation that we had done in Auburn, New York last summer. Let me just get this to share real quick. All right, can everyone see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So here we have the installation that we completed in Auburn, New York. This home is a 2,700 square foot, 3-bed, 2-bath home on 18 acres built in 1994. But before we get started, I'm going to tell you a little bit about A.C.E.S. So A.C.E.S has been in business since 2009. We install geothermal and solar exclusively. We just want to bring you the best products and do the best installs possible. So we keep our offerings, I don't want to say limited, but we do specialize in what we do. We are a family-owned business and we have a very close team. So teamwork is our #1 priority for our crew. That's just to make sure your install is done in a timely manner and to the highest standard possible. Locally, we are active in organizations that promote the use of clean heating and cooling technologies. We're a founding member of New York Geothermal Organization, and we're a founding partner of Ground Up Geothermal. And right now, because we understand what is going on in the community and how important it is to respect everyone, we are offering 100% online virtual quoting. So if you are uncomfortable with someone coming to your home for a quote, we have no problem doing it over the phone, via video chat. There's just a few pieces of information we will need from you in order to do this virtual quoting. You'll have to send us a few pictures and there will be some email correspondence. But most of the time we are able to give you a quote 100% without stepping foot into your home. There are certain circumstances where once we start the project, we will need to come over and take a look at what you have already, but usually the pictures suffice and we are able to give you a very accurate quote early on in the process. And with this, our goal, we want to make your home as efficient as possible. We want you to save money. We want you to reduce your carbon footprint. And I think these goals really line up with what HeatSmart CNY really wants all of us to adopt in our homes and in our lives. So now I'm going to move on a little bit more about the house. So we are in, for this install, Auburn, New York, in Cayuga County. Like I said before, it's 2,700 square feet, 3 bed, 2 bath. It's on 18 acres and it was built in 1994. It has a very, very large yard space, and that's what made it perfect for a horizontal loop field for the geothermal system to work with. Before installing geothermal, the home had a very inefficient heating system. So the home had a propane boiler system for baseboard heat, and it also had a wood burner boiler. And at this point, I think I'm gonna turn it over to AJ so he can tell you a little bit more about the system.
Thank you, Belle, and just wanted to introduce myself as AJ Heiligman from A.C.E.S and kind of walk you through the process for this project. And I hope at the end of this, we can answer any geothermal questions. We're not going to get too technical right now, how geothermal exactly works, how the refrigeration works, how the loop fill works. It'll be a high level overview of this project. But if anybody has technical questions about geothermal, or I call it the Geothermal 101, we can chat about that at the end. And also wanted to thank Lindsay and everybody at the CNY HeatSmart program. They've done a great job the past couple of years, and helping all the companies through the items going on now with the virus, and making sure we can still help customers try to reduce their dependency on fossil fuel. So thanks to Lindsay and her team, and we hope that we can make this year even better. So going back to the project at hand, like Belle said, this was a fairly decent sized house in central New York in Auburn. And the customer actually just purchased the home. So we do have some data and energy use that the previous owner had, but not exact, but we made a bunch of assumptions, and the customer definitely knew they did not want to feed the wood boiler all winter and also use propane. So he's a single gentleman on the road a lot. He has a farm and a trucking business. So he wanted to be able to set the thermostat and not have to worry about refilling that propane tank or filling up the wood boiler every year. He just wanted to work outside, do his farming, come home to a nice even heat, and with minimal energy bills. So we're gonna go through what we did pretty high level right now, and then we have some actual operational data, and then we're gonna get into the economics of the system of why it was a perfect choice for him. So his old system, again, a wood burning outdoor boiler system, and he could use propane inside depending what he wanted to do. Had hydronic baseboard heat, meaning he had no ductwork and no air conditioning besides window air conditioning units, and he had a very old, actually a very old mini split system for his master bedroom that was going to need repair. So this was a great opportunity to kind of do all, put air conditioning in all the house, in addition to take care of his domestic hot water. So what we did is we fully retrofitted the house with ductwork. Again, this was a 2-story house. So we worked together with him to find how to get ductwork to the first floor, which was pretty easy, but the second floor. Not only doing supply air, but just as important as putting drawing return air from the upstairs. So we worked together on that, and put a great duct system in the house. So with the actual base of the system, and we'll get into some photos and diagrams, but it's what we call our ground up model. It's basically a forced air geothermal system coupled with a water to water geothermal system that does 100% of his domestic hot water needs. And this is off a common single geothermal loop field. And again, we'll get into some diagrams shortly that will show that. So on our next slide, we're going to basically dive into Bell, you want to go forward about the two units here. I don't know if we can advance, Bell. What does that mean? So we have 2 units off a single loop field. On the left there, that's what we call a water to air unit. For those that don't know, that basically is a forced air geothermal unit. If you have a furnace, that would replace the furnace and the air conditioner, all one packaged unit. Sits in about the same footprint as your traditional furnace. And like this house, this was new because he had baseboard hot water. And then that little box on the right-hand side, that's what's called your water to water. These are actual photos. It's a small little box, about I equate it to a 3-foot cube, and that makes all the homes domestic hot water. So in addition to the benefits that we talked about when we first started, these are fully electrically driven. So there's no more combustion in the house. There's no more fossil fuels in the house. There's no more venting in the house. So it really makes the house a safer environment and a much tighter home because of the vents and the intake air is no longer needed. And then we're going to touch on it a couple of times also that since they're all electric, this makes it for a perfect home to put solar panels in the future. So if it's all electricity, they can then produce all of their electric on site and make the house net zero energy, meaning basically they could size it to pay no utility bill besides the meter charge every month. That might be between $18 and $25. So it's a large benefit to, just another benefit of why they go to geothermal. The next slide, we're going to actually show you the actual parts and pieces of it. So I'm going to touch upon the loop field real quick. So this customer actually is one of the few that dug their own loop field. He, again, is in the farming industry and the trucking industry, so had his own equipment, had a large area to do this, and was a hands-on gentleman. Do we do that all the time? We really don't. Maybe 1 or 2 customers a year that dig their own loop field, and we provide them a design to do that. We come out and do the inspection with them. We do all the pipe fusion or pipe connections, but they do all the digging and laying the pipe in. In that case, we separate the warranties, what A.C.E.S would be responsible for, what the customer would be responsible for. And his word of advice was basically he wouldn't do it again, and he wouldn't recommend anybody to dig their own loop field. Not because it was hard, it was just he realized that we knew what we were doing every day and could do it a lot faster. So he ended up spending more time and more money doing it himself where he could have been out farming or trucking. So that was his word of advice is, you know, let stick to the basics and let us do what we're good at. Something unique, the photo on the top right, actually you can see all the individual loops that come into this house. So most of our jobs, we do what's called a buried manifold, is where we do all our pipe connections underground of all the individual geothermal loops. But in this instance, you can see that there's 8 pipes, or there's a total of 8 pipes. I don't know if they're all in that photo coming through the wall. Each one of those loops is an individual loop that's 600 feet long, and it goes out a trench 300 feet and then comes back in a trench, in the same trench 300 feet. So he has eight pipes, 600 feet each, for a total of 4,800 linear feet of pipe buried underground. And then that gets connected to the flow center. So if you look in the bottom left photo, between the 2 geothermal units is a black box, and that's a flow center, and that's what moves the fluid from the loop field, which is a mixture of antifreeze and water, moves it from the loop field to each of the geothermal units. So if the water to air is calling, it pushes water to that. The water to water call for domestic hot water, it flows through that unit, each at a different flow rate. These are variable speed pumps, so it tries to save energy running through the loops into each unit respectively to try to get the greatest temperature difference at the lowest operating cost. So as you can see, I kind of went around this backwards, but our top left is sort of our design document of how we come up with it. And you can see how we mimic that pretty darn close in an instance like this. Not always do we have space in the basement this large to work with. So this was a nice area to do a job that mimics our drawing pretty darn close, and put in all the ductwork and all the individual loops coming into the basement. Because normally there's just one in and one out, and we do all the connections underground. So so if we go to the next slide, real high level, we sort of hit on that we are estimating that this gentleman was using if he was straight propane, he had a really old boiler down in the basement. We were estimating he was spending around $4,000 a year for that, and then his window AC units, mini splits. So he, let's just keep that in the back of your head, and we're going to talk on that later on, our cost comparison or our payback model. So if we go to the next slide, we actually took a bunch of data from his system. Now this is actual real life data driven from the WaterFurnace Symphony platform. And what this measures actual electricity consumption is, John, I'll get back to you on that. It shows actual consumption. There's actual current transducers or CTs on the inlet wiring to the units, and measures the consumption of electricity. Some other manufacturers, they might do an average multiplied by the run hours of operation to come up with the cost savings or operational costs. The WaterFurnace has an actual measurement of that data, and it's pretty close. There are some hiccups, but it's pretty darn close. And it's also showing what these equate to in dollars at a 12 cents per kilowatt hour cost. So when we get farther down the slide deck, we did our payback on assuming an 11 cents a kilowatt hour. So there's a slight discrepancy there, but we're pretty darn close. And this customer keeps her house at a heating temperature average of 68 degrees heating, and so far this year they've kept it between 68 and 70 actually the last few days, even though it doesn't show the cooling on this graph yet. When we pulled the data, we can talk about that. So this is actual consumption from this unit for this house and keeping it 68 degrees all year long, heating the full 2,400 square foot house. So it's pretty impressive. Again, if we go to the next slide, again, this is an actual screenshot of what their thermostat looks like. And one of the largest advantages of geothermal that we tell folks is to set it and forget it. You're not really saving any money by turning it back at nighttime or turning it down on the weekends. The only recommendation we do for changing set points is really for comfort. Some people like to sleep when it's cooler in their bedrooms. So that's really our only time when folks turn it down. But if we went back into the data here, this gentleman's kept it at a constant 68 degrees all winter long. Again, some houses are more drafty than others, and again, for comfort. So it's a case-by-case scenario, but most people just set it and let it be. The advantage of also our equipment is it comes with a Symphony platform, which you can have a phone app and you can turn it up and down from your phone. So if you do go away for a week and you do turn it down a couple degrees, you could start turning the temperature up upon your drive home right from your phone app. You could see if there were any alarms or errors, which are pretty infrequent, but you do get text messages or emails if there was an issue with your unit. The next slide dives into how we gather the data for the proof of our savings. This is actually taken this morning at 8:30 in the morning, and you can see that he's actually keeping his house at 68 degrees in this temperature. It shows that we're supplying air temperature at 57 degrees and, at a live snapshot in time. And his compressor is on speed 1 out of 9 or 12 speeds. So it's pretty impressive. And his loop field temperature right now is 45.3 degrees, which is a super efficient temperature for the beginning of the heating season, where we can get real technical, but it's recovering from the winter time. So it's a pretty impressive system. He's keeping it 68 degrees for 122 watts of compressor energy. So basically 2 light bulbs are what's cooling his house to 68 degrees this morning. On the right are just some data points that we get as a contractor. The customers don't see these, but we use these for if an issue was to arise, we can log in to do these, and also confirms our design. I'll answer that. Do we actively monitor systems? So actually, we have a portal where we can see all of our customers, and most everybody's given us permission to go in and see what they're doing, see how the system's operating. So I would say, yes, we do actively monitor a majority of our systems. We have a portal, again, like I said, that at the top of it, when we log in, we would see if there were any alarms or issues, which again are not very often. And then we toggle through systems, in the mornings, or even Bell or Zach in our office toggle through systems just to see how they're doing and really confirm our design and engineering to see how close their house operates to the model. Did we estimate their energy consumption correctly? If not, why not? For example, sometimes customers had fuel oil and they kept their house at 60 degrees. And now they keep it at 72 because it's a lot more efficient. And we kind of see just how everything's operating. Again, it's a house by house scenario, but I would say on a weekly basis, between the 3 of us in the office here, we are toggling through the systems. Yes, we overlook things and miss things because there's hundreds of them on our portal. But I would say if there is an alarm, we know right away. We get emails and texts just as a customer would. And the advantage of that is, for example, people are just switching to air conditioning this weekend. And we had a lot of folks that had clogged condensates, which instead of us sending a tech out, on overtime on the holiday, we can even walk people through how to unclog their condensate. You know, they might have a dirty filter. They might be some debris stuck in the drain pan. The pump may become clogged, or debris or algae growing in it. So the alarm is actually detailed enough to tell us what it is, and do we have to send somebody, or can the homeowners up to it? Can they diagnose it to save some money? But again, very, very few of these come in. But we did get some over the weekend because of the cooling for the first time, or even, you know, dust, drywall dust, whatever it might be. I think the next slide is a pretty, you know, a exciting slide for me and for a lot of folks out here, and it's actually maybe a little hard to see, but we could send this out, about the economics on this system. So this customer had to do something. They had a failing system, and they wanted something they could just turn a thermostat on, be it propane, be it electric, or geothermal. So they got basically some comparable proposals for a fossil fuel-based system. And with ductwork, a furnace, air conditioner, it was right around an $18,000 installed cost. Our geothermal system was about $44,000. But with a $10,000 NYSERDA grant and a 30% federal tax credit, the net system cost was about $23,000 to $24,000. So we're comparing the net system price after incentives. Can everybody get incentives? Can everybody take advantage of them? Everybody can take advantage of the NYSERDA rebates, which is now handled by the utility company, assuming you're not on municipal electric. And majority of our customers can take advantage of the federal tax credit, even if they can't do it all in 1 year. It's a carryover credit, so we can answer questions about the tax credit at the end if needed. I just threw in there a 1% inflation rate for utilities. Is that correct? Probably not, but I did it even across the board for both electric and propane. Also, propane is at a pretty low price. I use $2 a gallon for propane, and like I said earlier, 11 cents per kilowatt hour. Again, this is a model. So since he has not been there a full year, we haven't trued it up, but it's a model to get people close. Will it ever be exact? No, because everybody operates their house differently. For example, he's keeping it at 68 and cooling, which we model typically for 72 or 74, but it gets us close in the range. What we really want to show is how we financed it over 10 years at 4.99% versus a furnace. The best competing furnace financing was 10 years at 9.99%. Yes, people can get financing other places, credit cards, or they can borrow against a HELOC. So there are other, but I compared to 9.99, which is comparable around here that furnace companies actually use. So if you do the loan amounts, you can see that on a 10-year note, it would pay $252 for geothermal or $238 for a comparable propane system. Which, hey, geothermal is more money. Let's not do that. Well, back up a little bit, because our model showed, again, showed that he'd be saving $161 per month in utility savings, meaning his net positive cash flow would be $147 from day number one. So once you take into account the finance payments and then factor in the energy savings, he's actually cash flow positive from day number one. So that's the most exciting part, is as long as you're looking long-term and not looking at the payments, loan payments, you have to include the utility savings. You should look at that a geothermal system has a life expectancy of the 20 to 25 years versus a furnace at 15 years. Should also look at that your loop field has a life expectancy at minimum of 55 years. So in 20 to 25 years, when you replace your geothermal system, you're only replacing the indoor components, which is not the full system price. And you'll get another X amount of years out of your loop field versus a furnace and air conditioner. You're replacing all the components. You're not reusing anything. Again, I think somebody asked the next best upgrade option that this gentleman was looking at was just a propane, 95% propane unit. Are there other upgrade options? Sure, he could have looked at other air source heat pumps or other mini split options. And the price, depending what he did, would be comparable to that $18,000 range, maybe more, maybe less, depending on what he did. Again, he needed ductwork in the house. Would he do all new mini splits? So again, this is to get us close, that it's a 3-year payback. It's not a 20-year payback. It's not a 6-month payback. So if we use 3 years as, in this example, it's a starting point. Everybody's a little bit different. Some people might be 7 years. Question I'll answer: if you only have room for vertical, how does it affect? I'm guessing that is cost. Our vertical and horizontal systems, depending where you are pretty close to the same amount of money, believe it or not. Years ago, vertical systems were much more money, but we've, for a couple of different reasons, we've gotten our vertical drilling costs down. And depending on geology, is rock close, is gas or salt water present, depending on a couple scenarios, we can get you pretty darn close with a vertical system versus a horizontal system. Again, houses 1 mile apart could be totally different drilling conditions, and so it's tough to answer that question, but we're pretty close on the majority of the times. The next slide, we talk about so why this customer made that decision, how we helped this gentleman make the decision is the cost savings. $4,500 might be a little high for this house, but we have plenty of houses that are larger or smaller that or super inefficient or really, really old fuel oil system that do spend $4,500 a year without air conditioning too. So cost savings, the comfort. We didn't talk about some advantages of the even heat throughout the house, keeping it, setting it and forgetting it, not having the hot and cold swings. The environment, we haven't touched on the environmental benefits, but I think everybody in this webinar are probably aware of all those benefits. And ease of use, you get on your app, you get on your thermostat, and you just set it. We're not worrying about people, calling to get your propane tank filled. They're worrying about a fuel tank leaking in the basement. So it's just go in and work all day and come home to a nice indoor environment. The last question I think was about how tall access for a drill rig. There's a couple different models we utilize, but we typically say between 40 and 50 feet you need for a clear span for a drill rig to get into, height elevation wise. We've been in houses that might have some trees that pose an issue. While we try not to cut them, we've been known to go up with a ladder with a ratchet strap and try to tie the branches back so they don't interfere with the drilling. We also utilize a track mounted drill rig that's a little bit smaller, that drills 10 feet at a time versus 20 feet at a time. So we can get smaller rigs in, and it just depends on the geology, if that rig would work in an area. But typically it's 40 to 50 feet elevation or height where we drill. So do we feel this was a success story or a good case study? Even though it was, hasn't been a full year, the data shows that it's working well. We have had no issues. The customer had to do something, and he was saving from day number one. From the time we flipped the switch on, he was cash flow positive. It's you know, yes, it's super efficient with the geothermal system. He's stabilized his costs. You know, electric is somewhat, I like to say, somewhat regulated, and he can become net zero energy if he wanted to add solar. So a lot of customers add solar to houses after a year of their energy bills to see how much they want. Again, in this case, we're expecting a short payback because he had to spend some money. He needed to upgrade his equipment, so it's a short payback period. Answering the one question, there was no major envelope work done. We did some sealing in the attic when we were up there doing the ductwork. We did a blower door on the house, and it was, I don't have those numbers in front of me. And also the band joist was sealed up, but no major improvements were done. I think we had a fairly decent mid 50,000 BTU an hour heating load on this, but I don't have that in front of me. But it was a fairly decent house to start out with compared to an older farmhouse. Because I mentioned the word farming, and this was not an older farmhouse by any means. So that sort of wraps up our slide deck that we put together. And we might have went over some things too fast or too slow, or people are interested in learning other items or topics about geothermal. So happy to answer questions. I also know we have another a board member from New York Geo on the call, John Shavako. So if there's any state level questions, I'm sure I'm putting John on the spot, but I'm sure he could chime in if there were any state level items. He's a very active advocate for all the New York State geothermal installers, and very, you know, organizes the New York Geo conference every year. So anybody in the geothermal industry should thank John Shavako, and I know he joined. So there's not anything that I can't answer. John certainly can.
Great. Thanks, AJ. I'm going to switch back over to a couple of last slides from us, and then we can go fully onto the questions. I see there's a few more in the group chat that we might want to address. So why don't you take a look at those while I'm wrapping up, and then we'll come back to it, okay? Okay, so just wanted to give a shout out to the many installers that are working with us in the HeatSmart CNY campaign. A.C.E.S is clearly one of them. If you want to follow up with A.C.E.S and talk to them about what you want to do for your home as improvements, you can enroll with us on our HeatSmart CNY website and pick Ground Up, and that will go to A.C.E.S. And we are also working with 4 other installer partners: Halco, Snug Planet, MP Environmental, and Simply Installs. There are similar case study videos for all of them. At Halco, Snug, and MP Environmental, we partnered with HeatSmart Tompkins for their videos earlier this month, and you can find those on our website. And Simply Installs will be doing a case study this Friday at noon, looking at cold climate air source heat pumps as part of a dual fuel system to help natural gas customers reduce their gas use. All the different installers have different specialties. And with the HeatSmart program, we've been working to, we've gone through the process of, vetting installers, choosing ones that we thought would be good partners for our community members. They also help you get access to the various the incentives that AJ was mentioning. As he said, the NYSERDA rebate that was existing last year has now been transferred to the utilities. So we're in a new era of the incentives. It's measured slightly differently, but it's about the same amounts. And so you're looking at about $1,000 10,000 BTU hours for cold climate air source heat pumps. And for ground source heat pumps, you're looking at $1,500 per 10,000 BTU hours. Hey, AJ, if you were to measure this case study in BTU hours, how large of a system was this? You say it was 50,000 BTU hours?
The rebate was, this was an older, under the NYSERDA program,
Right.
it was about a $10,000 rebate.
Yeah. So, and then of course for geothermal, there's also the 26% federal tax credit, which still exists this year. It does go down to 21 or 22%, I believe it is actually in 2021. For low to moderate income households, HeatSmart CNY has best federal affordability grants, offering $7,500 off of a whole system for a geothermal system, or $2,000 for a cold climate air source heat pump system, and $350 for heat pump water heaters. And if you have a large commercial space or a large nonprofit space, large buildings in general, there are incentives available now as well. And so the installer partners we're working with, including A.C.E.S, can help you access these incentives and figure out what's going to be the ultimate cost of your home. And so the process for working through HeatSmart CNY is to, the first thing to do is enroll on our website and pick one of the installers to work with to start with for your quote. You can always get second quotes from other installers. Enrolling with HeatSmart CNY allows us to help you in the decision-making process. We're here as a resource. We have our hotline. You can reach me at any time. We have other experts. And really, we're just here to help hold your hand. The real experts, of course, are the installers who are doing this day in and day out and have their hands on the technology. And as AJ said, from there, you get a virtual assessment, you can receive an estimate. Then the installers will come and, before they really start the installation, just ground check that all the things that were sent in made sense. And that there's no surprises at the home, because you never know, as most people know with home construction projects, when you open something up, you find another project. So, making sure that the estimate is correct, and then finalize the contract and install. And here's, as I said, we are one of many campaigns in the state. If you are outside of the Oswego, Onondaga, Madison, Cayuga, and Cortland region, there is likely a HeatSmart campaign in your county. If your county is not highlighted on this map yet, stay tuned. Within the next month or so, you may see that light up with new campaigns coming online through NYSERDA. So I'm going to turn it back over to AJ to talk about there's probably a couple of questions in here. I see from John Shaheen earlier on, does the buffer tank shown serve both the Series 7 and the 2-ton domestic hot water system? That is there one common buffer tank?
So real quick, I also see John Manning on the line. I wanted to give him a shout out also. I call him the godfather of geothermal, and also my mentor when I started 12 plus years ago, and went to his training, before even, knowing what a geothermal system was. So just give him a shout out. Also, I see him on the phone.
Absolutely. John, you snuck on. Good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
John, the buffer tank, so there is no true buffer tank in this system. The Series 7 is a forced air system, and requiring nothing to do with the domestic hot water. And then the tank that you saw in the photo was an 80-gallon storage tank that worked in conjunction with the 2-ton water-to-water system. So that's basically where that single tank is where the water was stored for the 2-ton system. Now, if you had a hydronic system or a baseboard system, it'd be a different discussion. He also previously heating domestic hot water with. He was using either he had an indirect tank there that was fed off of either the propane or the wood boiler. It would kind of go through a heat exchanger indirect tank. So that's how he heated his domestic hot water with before. That was totally removed from the system. All that stuff was taken out of the system. Some of the baseboards were removed. Others were just abandoned in place until he might remodel room by room. But some were left, some were taken out. I have a oil-fired boiler system. The geothermal work with water heating, not just for hot water, but also for heat. So yes, I would say yes and no. If you have, for example, baseboard hot water, and we're not interested in ductwork for cooling, we have been successful with combining geothermal with baseboard hot water. You have to be cautious and careful with the design, because a lot of the older boilers, they were used to running 180-degree water through the baseboards. And geothermal, we say, we run 140-degree water plus or minus through the baseboard hot water system. A lot of times the old radiators were oversized, so we could heat a room just fine with 140-degree water running through it. Sometimes the house had one zone per floor, and we would separate rooms or by zones and add more zoning. So the last radiator is not cold by the time the water gets to it. Other times we would replace a piece of section of the baseboard with a newer version that gave off more heat at 140 degrees. Or sometimes, we might use the baseboard for what we call stage 1 heating, and we might combine it with a forced air system, either through ductwork or a hydronic mini split system that could be run from the geothermal to kind of add some heat when it's really cold through moving air over a hot water coil, basically. So yes, you can, but it's a little bit more of a design process just to make sure what you have are some options with baseboard hot water or radiators or whatever you might have. You could also have radiant heat, which it works great with. So it just depends on the house and the heat load per room and what you currently have. So yes, it could be done. Short answer, it could be done.
See, the other part of her question is, are rebates available if they work with contractors not listed with HeatSmart? And the short answer is yes. The longer answer is the utilities have their own list of accredited contractors. All of our contractors are approved to work through both the NYSERDA and the utility programs. So make sure you have a contractor who is accredited through the utility at this point in order to access rebates. The only incentives not available if you don't work through HeatSmart are the ones that are for our low to moderate income households, the affordability grant.
And if you are on municipal electric, the rebates are limited also.
That's true. That's true. We do have some information on some air source incentives, but it's limited municipal electric by municipal electric. So we can help you try to connect with those if you are interested from a municipal electric standpoint. I think there's one other question from Carol. If you only have room for vertical, how does it affect the case? Or we answered that, but can you get your equipment through a smaller side yard space, and how wide and tall do you need for access to a larger backyard?
So I missed that. So there are some, I call them rock quarry drill rigs. There might be a better name for them, but they do make some rigs that are track mounted and come on a trailer and might be 6 or 7 feet wide, or 8 feet. There's some variation on what's available and timing and the drilling contractor. But there are smaller rigs that can get into a side yard or a backyard. How it affects the price, I'd say it's a case-by-case scenario based upon your geology, because these are smaller rigs and it takes longer to drill in certain areas depending on what's underground. So if you had a specific house address and we'd have to, whoever in that area would look at it on a case-by-case basis and what equipment could fit there. So it is possible for sure. They even make drilling apparatus that you can do in your basement. Now, do we do that around here? No, but down in New York City or other big cities, there are drill rigs that go in commercial basements and can drill vertical wells. So I guess anything's possible. It just work, you know, what could fit in the dollars and cents and doesn't make sense. So.
Are there any other questions? We can open this up at this point.
So how much more would the loop field have cost if the customer hadn't provided the loop field work? Did the customer only do excavation and backfill? So in this case was a little different. In the cases that we've had the customer dig the trenches himself, you know, that's not a large deduct because it's typically a one-day job for us. And we have a big piece of equipment, so that might be a $2,000, $2,500 deduct if they were to dig it and backfill it. In this case, the customer dug the loop field, put the coils into a large central. Well, no, he put the coils in and brought them right into the basement. So he basically did everything because there was no underground fusion. But it's not a big number because we are so efficient at it, and it's, you know, a couple $1,000s at most if they do it themselves. You know, that's the high level version of it.
Thanks, John. John says thanks, the shout out to AJ. And I also wanted to acknowledge before we get off, I want to thank everyone for coming today and also recognize that we have a number of our steering committee members from the HeatSmart CNY campaign on the call. I want to just give a shout out to Marion Brown, John Shaheen, and our intern Ashley, as well as Andra Limanas, who's my colleague at Alliance for a Green Economy, and also on the HeatSmart CNY steering committee. So it's great to see a number of familiar names, great to see a number of people I haven't heard from in a while, and also some new faces. So thank you all for joining us. This will be available on the HeatSmart CNY website in a day or so, and feel free to share it with friends that you think might need to see it. And again, the next steps are to join us, you know, if you want to explore the options and you haven't already enrolled with HeatSmart CNY, you know, add your name. It allows me to help you, and we'll go forward from here. You can enroll right on our website at heatsmartcny.org. All right, thank you, everyone.
Guys.
A really good evening, afternoon. Stay cool, and if you're sweltering the heat, no, just dream of geothermal.